Okay, folks, as you see, we have pulled away from the pier. You are now in the southern basin of Lake George. Lake George is basically two basins, southern basin, northern basin, and they are connected by a strip called the Narrows. If you look off to our right, that big tan building with the red roof, that is the Fort William Henry Hotel. Has been a Fort William Henry Hotel there since 1768. That's a third one, the others did burn. And if you notice a little pavilion there, you see a canoe, and that is a depiction of a scouting party. If you look at the very front of that canoe, it's a rendition of Robert Rogers. Any military historians or old Army folks, military type, will maybe recognize the name. Robert Rogers started a little group called the Rangers, Robert's Rangers. This was his patrol area. That was his garrison, Fort William Henry. Well, Robert Rogers and his Rangers were an unconventional warfare group, and in fact, the Rangers are still in existence today. 2nd of the 75th, 3rd of the 75th, out of Fort Benning, Georgia. And it did burn in 1757. What you're looking at is a recreation made from the original blueprints on the exact footprint. It is now a living museum. But if you look at the lawn, you'll see 1755. That's when the original Fort William Henry was built by Sir William Johnson. And in doing so, he did secure the south end of the lake for the British against their nemesis, the Marquis de Montcalm, at his garrison, Fort Carillon, 32 miles north in what is now today Ticonderoga, New York. Now we are going past the headquarters of the Lake George Steamboat Company, and that's the building you see in the middle of the pier, and that's our flagship, the Lac du Saint-Sacrement. And she's letting us know she's getting ready for her noon 2-hour cruise. She is 190 feet long, 40 feet wide, her 4 decks capable of carrying over 1,200 passengers. 400 for fine dining. Now, the Lake George Steamboat Company is quite historic. Created in 1817 by an act of the New York State Legislature. Acted as a capacity and an extension of the D&H Railroad till 1947, which point it was bought by Mr. Wilbur Dow. Mr. Dow, quite a fascinating man. At the age of 15, had gone to sea. By the age of 25, had earned his unlimited masters, all vessels, all oceans rating. That wasn't enough. He went on to become a lawyer, an admiralty lawyer. Helped many of the Greek shipping tycoons start their companies, including Aristotle Onassis. Had 3 cases before the Supreme Court, won them all. And if that wasn't enough, 1954 led an expedition to the magnetic North Pole, forever securing himself a spot in the Explorers Club. Well, we did lose Mr. Dow, Wilbur Dow, in 1991. He was followed by his son, Bill Dow. Lake George, unfortunately, Bill Dow did pass away a couple weeks ago. We mourn his loss to this day. That's why you see our flags are at half-staff to commemorate Mr. Bill Dow. But don't worry, the company is now in the hands of his sons. So Lake George Steamboat Company is still in the Dow family today and is the oldest continuously running steamboat company. Now, if you follow the South Shore, that big park you see back there, that's Battlefield Park, named for many of the battles that occurred between 1755, 1757, 1758, to name a few. Great place to take a walk if you're interested today. There's walking paths. They all lead to different monuments depicting characters such as Father Isaac Jones, Sir William Johnson, King Hendrick, the Native American, the graves of the 4 unknown from the Battle of 1757, the statue of Indian drinking from the stream, and you can actually find the remains of the original Fort George of 1758. Now you are at the southernmost end of Lake George, which means everything goes north from here, including the waters of Lake George. Unique to this body of water, the lake actually does have a slight current. It flows north. It's 32 miles, terminates in Ticonderoga, New York, where it goes through a series of falls and rapids called La Chute. Falls a vertical distance over 220 feet, draining into Lake Champlain. Well, we are traveling north, meaning off to our right, on the starboard side of the boat, is the east shore of Lake George, which is primarily residential. You'll see some beautiful homes and camps. In fact, you see a lot of them starting to get boarded up for the winter, because some are still 3 season. They're only here for the spring, summer, and fall. But off to our right or starboard, this rather large point is a commercial establishment of sorts. This is the compound of Weowaka. This acreage was originally given to Mary Wilsey Fuller in 1908 by Katrina and Spencer Trask. Mary Wilsey Fuller had a dream to create a vacation spot for the working women of the time, a very safe vacation spot. And her legacy lives on today because Weowaka still offers affordable vacations to all women from all walks of life. Now notice I keep saying women. Weowaka, if you look at the boathouse, you'll read the sign. It means the eternal spirit in women. Mary Wilsey Fuller dream lives on because Weowaka is an exclusively women's only retreat. There is one exception they have made recently. They do in June and July allow men to go onto the compound only on a day pass and at the invitation of and when accompanied by a woman. But he has to be off the property by 8 o'clock. Now, in the month of August, no men on the compound, period, end of sentence. Now, there's one exception, that's caretaker Jim. Sometimes we see him out. He's the only one allowed on the compound. So what you're looking at is Mary Wilsey Fuller's dream. It's still established. You'll see many beautiful Victorian homes through the woods. If you look off in the corner, follow the shoreline, you see the brown building with the flag on it. Follow the shoreline, you'll see a little blue sign with a gold or yellow border. That's a New York State historical marker. And right behind it, you'll see a little chalet-style building. That was originally Katrina Trask who owned the property. And what she would do is host the Artist in Residence or the Artist Students League. And what that is depicting in 1908, a young aspiring artist on a scholarship to Weowaka, or that is actually called Wanaka, that's the name of that building. She was supposed to be there, she won a scholarship, supposed to be there for a week, ended up spending a month. That young artist, Georgia O'Keeffe. Well, you are. Again, the shore is primarily residential. But if you look beyond the shoreline, that ridge line is French Mountain. And we just saw Fort William Henry and Battlefield Park and French Mountain. And if anybody's either read the book or seen the movie, James Fenimore Cooper's novel, this is the backdrop that he uses to tell that story. In the book, he introduces us to characters such as Mogwai and Uncas and Hawkeye and Chingachgook, to the Marquis de Montcalm, the French general coming out of Ticonderoga, in his battle against the British and General Monroe. General Monroe's eventual surrender, the subsequent massacre, and the burning of Fort William Henry in 1757 by the French in Huron. All here along this mountain range, in our backyard, and all in the last of the Mohegans. Now these gentlemen off to our right, they are fishing either for trout or salmon probably over there. Now Lake George is one of the purest, cleanest bodies of water, one of the top 10 freshwater lakes in the world, one of the top 5 in North America. And it retains that water quality because the waters come in through underground springs, all filtered, coming off the mountains. It also comes in through brooks and streams. If you look off to the right, you see the boathouse. Look to the left of the boathouse, you'll see one of those brooks. We had some rain last night, it's bringing that mountain water into the lake. Now if we follow the shoreline, see some beautiful foliage, see a birch tree in full color out there. And right on the end of the point, you do see a beautiful sight this morning, our flag, and we do have the fox out on the lawn this morning, and our Statue of Liberty. Well, folks, at this point in the cruise, looking at that beautiful scene, to take a moment on behalf of Captain and crew to thank a very special group of people. Those that made today like today possible and the freedoms to be out here on this boat, on this lake, on this fall day, and that is all of our veterans and our military men and women who are sacrificing service. So to them we give a sincere thank you and salute to all. Great to see him come back. A picnic island, day use only, and just beyond it is Long Island. That is a overnight camping island, and both of those are only accessible by boat. Now if you look at Assembly Point, you see we have that really neat cloud line just below the mountain ridge. That mountain right beyond it, that's Buck Mountain. Great place to climb. If you're interested, find Pilot Knob Road, hit the trailhead, 3.5 miles. You're at the top. We'll follow the lake to the left. It's a little cloudy today. You can just make out the nub of the Knapp estate. Mr. Knapp, he had a mansion up there, burned in the early 1900s. He was one of the founders of Union Carbide. And you really can't see it today, folks. It is the Tongue Mountain Range. It's right behind that cloud bank. You can just see the top peeking out. And that's actually just about the midway point on the lake. Follow it around, and you see the West Mountain. Well, you see it's now for her 2-hour lunch tour. There she is. We're going to say hello on our whistle. And the Lac du Saint-Sacrement, she is the largest vessel on Lake George, as well as the largest vessel on any inland waterway in the state of New York. Now looking off to our right, that island closest to us, that's Diamond Island. Gets its name for the little quartz crystals you can find there, look just like diamonds. Off to the left, you'll see 2 islands. Those are Little Canoe and Big Canoe. They are actually private islands owned by the Bush family at the Canoe Island Lodge up in Diamond Point, New York. If you're a guest of the lodge, you can take their boat out, spend the day out on their islands. Now another one of the cottages, I'll call it what it is, a mansion here on Millionaire's Rose coming into view. If you look on the hill, you see the English Tudor. That's called Wickiescow. Now that was built for Royal C. Peabody, one of the Peabody brothers. He was one of the founders of Brooklyn Gas and Electric. And when Mr. Peabody wanted to build a home, he needed an architect. He didn't just get any architect, he got Stanford White, the original architect of the original Madison Square Garden. Now he did call his home Wickiescow, which means home on beautiful water. And yes, Wickiescow is still a private family residence today. No, I can't tell you who lives there, but I can tell you they did put a swimming pool in. That's right, you got a saltwater swimming pool about 15 feet from a freshwater lake. Now coming into view is a beautiful resort here. This is, you see all the lodges or cabins, that is the lodges at Cresthaven. Originally part of the Adolph Ox estate. Mr. Ox was the publisher of the New York Times. Well, his estate did burn years ago, but the boathouse you see, that is original to the property. It is now the Boathouse Restaurant. See off to the right, that is their outdoor bar. They do have high tops, but inside the boathouse is their dining room. Now you see the chairs and the little arch set up there. That was because there was a wedding there yesterday. And this is the grounds of the Inn at Erlewes. As we go by, if you look at the top of the hill, look to the left, the building, stone building with the red chimneys, that is original to the property. That was originally built for Edward Shepard. Turn of the century, Mr. Shepard, a prominent New York City attorney. And actually, Mr. Shepard opened that home up to returning military people from World War I, so they could convalesce. He held it to 1960s. It was sold to Mr. Charles R. Wood. And then in the 1990s, it was sold to an investment group who did add the addition off to the right or to the north of the original home. That is their banquet hall, upscale accommodation, fine dining. And as I said, it is a big destination for weddings now. Now, if we look off to the right between these cabins, you'll see a sign that says Sun Castle. And when Mr. Charles R. Wood owned the property in the 1960s, that's what he called it, Sun Castle. Now, Mr. Woods is a local, or was a local businessman, started with meager means. 1950s, he started an amusement park just south of Lake George Village. He started on 5 acres of land with 4 employees, and he called that Storytown, Storytown, USA. Well, what we knew as kids of Storytown is now Six Flags Great Escape. Henry Hotel. And in 1884, a young 12-year-old boy and his brother and his cousin were staying there. And in his diary, he chronicles they rode out to an island that had afternoon tea. And that's this island we see coming up on the right. This is Tea Island. At the turn of the century, a tea house once stood at the northern end, but that did burn long ago. The private family still retains ownership. This is a private island, so you have your private island. You have no streets, no sidewalks, no neighbors, no street lights, no stop signs. Nobody knocking on your door trying to sell you anything. Instead, you have a beautiful little island, beautiful little natural cove, and a beautiful little cabin in the woods right in the back. Look in the back here, folks. What you see there, they just pulled the dock from the south side, are now putting it in there for the winter. We'll give them a hole on the whistle. Oh, that young boy used to come out here was Teddy Roosevelt. And as we pass by Tea Island, if you look off to your right, you see the white home on that rocky ledge. That was the home of Evangeline Booth. Her father was General William Booth, founder of the Salvation Army. And following the west shore, you see the gray buildings over there. That is the Quarters, which is a timeshare resort. But if you look in the middle, you'll see one of the buildings look a little bit whiter than the others. You'll see it has a red chimney. That is original to the property. And that was originally owned by Alfred Stieglitz, the noted photographer of his era.
Unless you want to jump overboard and swim for the shore.
The